Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good morning, afternoon. Minister Goge, ministers, youth leaders from Pan-African Youth and Ethiopian Youth Council and Malaysian Youth Council, Izzat, and friends, I would say children, sons and daughters. It's an important departure from a normal diplomatic encounter, because with the invitation of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed for me to visit here, and then his kind support to allow me to engage with the youth, not only from Ethiopia, Africa, and the coordination by the Malaysian Youth Council. Now, let me share with you some of my observations about Africa. You know, we grew up in the 60s, 70s, looking at the great visionary leaders of Africa. Ahmad Sekou Toure, Kwame Nkrumah, Julius Nyerere, and of course, Mandela. These were people of, they are visionary. They love their countries, their nations. They reject colonialism, the subjugation, exploitation, harlom parlom of men by men. And they clamor for independence to bring back dignity for their people. And in many ways they were successful, although they represent an ideal, not for Africa only, but also for us. I was a young student in Malaysia, looking at this development with such awe. Leaders who suffered the enormities of colonialism and imperialism, and who believe in their own history and culture, the strength of their people, the resolve, who initiate this understanding and the reconstruction of African history, not from the viewpoint of the colonial masters, but to see the enormous contribution, culture, civilization that Africa has produced. Izzat mentioned about the initial encounter between Islam and the Orthodox Church here, or Negus, or we call it Maharaja Najashi, that shows the level of tolerance, not only tolerance, the appreciation of the values of humanity and justice, the protection to those who have been oppressed elsewhere in the Arab world. And then, of course, here you're familiar with the Battle of Adwa, which epitomizes the struggle against Italian colonialism, but symbolizes colonialism, subjugation of people, denigration of human values, the exploitation of communities, the superiority complex. And some of you may be familiar, of course, Adwa does not represent only Ethiopian revolution, but it shows a showcase of the tenacity, the resolve of a people who will not surrender and subjugate to the foreign power. What have we learned? Well, we have to learn. I'm not suggesting that many people learn. You see, the colonial mentality continues. And if you have an opportunity to read Frantz Fanon, the great fighter for justice and anti-colonial and colonial rule, French surgeon, I think also in the Caribbean, and went to Algerian War of Independence. His classic work was the pedagogy of the oppressed. The problem about colonialism, which the youth must work, was the pedagogy of the oppressed. The problem about colonialism, which the youth must reflect seriously, is not just an subjugation of the people and come independence is done. No. The colonial mentality sometimes persists with the colonial masters and those who have been colonized. That is precisely the reason why we see many independent countries from Asia, Africa, Latin America behave more like colonial masters than true champions of freedom and justice and independence. That is a challenge. You, the youth, must deliberate, decide for yourself whether we want to continue this sort of mindset, colonized. What he said, I think Frantz Fanon, and then followed by one of his admirers, Malik Ben Nabi, he said the problem of colonoscibilité is a French word. Colonoscibilité is not just colonization, but the attitude, the surrender by independent leaders, by Africans, Asians, Malaysians, whatever, who openly reject colonialism but become subjugated and colonized. The mind is colonized. What is white, what is impressive, what the policies which you accept and adopt must be dictated by the West, Paris or London or Washington, whatever. Hardly any understanding of the society, history and culture. And this is going to struggle. I mentioned the African Union this morning about the effort of our then leaders, which includes Nyerere Nkrumah, supported by Jawaharlal Nehru from India and Zhou Enlai from China. When they went to Bandung, Indonesia, under Sukarno, who organized the Afro-Asian Conference of 1955. You see, these leaders, be it Zhou Enlai or Nehru or Nkrumah, Nyerere or Sukarno, they were visionaries. They then, in 1955, knew their independence would be rendered meaningless if we don't work together, strengthen our resolve, and not be totally independent and choose to surrender to the whims and fancies. Our export to the United States annually is $50 billion. We're expanding investments and trade with China. ASEAN is, of course, very cohesive force. Fortunately, ASEAN is one of the most peaceful regions in the world and fastest growing economy. You see, peace is prerequisite before you talk about growth and economic development. So, I'm not suggesting in any way that we work only with among ourselves, but I'm suggesting, therefore, that whilst opening up trade, investments, collaboration, Africa, Asia, Latin America, we must continue to engage in this globalized world. But the mindset is important. When you say globalized means modern I mean, the term seems to be like a modern invention. But what about all these great cultures and civilizations in Africa? Were they not global? Even Malaysia under the Malacca Sultanate was very global. The Chinese Admiral Cheng He, with his 1454, if I'm not mistaken, 1540, yeah, something like that. I mean, travel all around the world. But what we know and appreciate is only Magellan. That is why the first prerequisite to be truly independent is to free our minds and our soul. And to understand that peace and development are essential features to ensure growth and security of our nation. So there's a lot to learn and to unlearn. Governance is a major issue. This is bringing up to the second point. Okay, right? We have this understanding. Take pride in ourselves. There must be to reconstruct our history, because we use texts determined by the others. We study from the professors in the West. There's nothing wrong with it. But be selective, be intelligent, not slavish. We have fought against slavery. We've fought against colonialism. We should not be slavish in our mentality and attitude. Okay. Then we should not excess. Why are we, or why did we and our forefathers and mothers fought hard against colonial masters? Because we reject that display of arrogance. We reject that condescending attitude towards others. We reject that the wealth of a country be absconded to enrich the few. We reject corruption and abuse of power. And that's why we clamored for independence. But as Frantz Fanon said, it's not to replicate the excesses of the past. It's to ensure that the reform and the changes continue based on these ideals. And of course, I'm excited meeting the youth, because I'm reminded and checked to be sure that you remain true to the principles and ideals. Because as you know, politics and power sometimes tend to be, to drag you into practical realities. But it's always important to associate with youth idealism. And I'm a firm believer, I'm a great optimist, and I've seen youth in action. First of all, to free the mind, to be more reasoned, more critical, to understand that without peace, nothing works. And to secure peace means some form of understanding and compromise is required. And once you have achieved that, then you have to really look at the issues of governance. We have, of course, to be sustainable, transform digitally, to move towards AI, alternative energy, food security, but we never lose sight that we need values to protect the human ideal. The deficit in the world in politics, I can say, from my limited experience, is the loss of values. Yeah. Injustices are being tolerated because of different color, or different religion, or different tribes. Yeah. Oppression is tolerated. And we support those with power and wealth. So we're still back to the law of the jungle. There's no more question of rule of law. So this deficit must be addressed. And we want the young to be as committed and strong in their resolve, and courageous in their conviction, to ensure that we will have a better Africa, better Asia, and better world. Notwithstanding the excesses that you find or hear from time to time. And Malaysia is, of course, in a small, emerging economy, but fortunately, I learned a lot from the ideals and the visionaries of African leaders, and I thought it would be of enormous advantage and benefit to Malaysian youth if we could continue to engage and talk about this. Youth rights, yes, and responsibilities, yes. The role to be able, as Mr. Ergoge mentioned about the new technology, training, opportunities, yes, we'll continue to do that. And inshallah, I will be able to engage with my friends in ASEAN, and probably by the time we meet in Malaysia, probably we extend Malaysia, Africa, and bring some ASEAN, Asian leaders, and probably one to progressive Latin American youth. Because we will do that. Listen, reflect, but also to engage and critically assess and suggest and even criticize. I don't think a forum should be limited to be like a monologue. So thank you again. It's a great experience. And I see the faces of the young. They look very energetic. I'm sorry, I may sound a bit too serious, and you say this guy is coming to give this very serious lecture. No, I want to share with you, with all sincerity, what our forefathers have offered, and what we have to dedicate ourselves to continue these ideals, and not to allow the excesses to continue. Thank you. Wassalamu alaikum.
Right, that we open for Q&A sessions. Is it good? Okay, so wow, now we open the floor to Q&A. We will take only two questions from the floor. So yeah, please make your question brief. Anyone?
Yes.
Thank you, excellent. Just should be very visible. One, I want to really thank you. Your revolutionary spirit is almost as African as that trigger come from, that enabled Malaysia to keep up with the development pace, even when the population of young people was increasing and their demands in this globalized economy is also increasing. Thank you.
Well, we have our Malaysia or the region to have our own problems. I don't represent a view to give you a good positive story and propaganda. There are excesses too. There are issues of governance. Remember in the 90s, when there was this impressive, phenomenal growth registered by many of the countries in Asia, including Malaysia. The World Bank then published a report, the East Asian Economic Miracle. Now, most leaders were excited. Now, of course, I was happy. I was finance minister at the time. But I thought this sort of narrative does not necessarily help, because we lull into some complacency and culture of contentment, whereas there are some serious issues we have to address. Issues of governance relating to corruption, relating to inequality between the poor and the rich. So that made me realize that whilst we're thankful that people do give this sort of recognition, there are issues we have to address. And these issues, if not addressed, will result in the decline of the nations. As you know, all these theories of cyclical theory of civilization, there are reasons why countries at times reach its pedestal, many reasons that causes a decline. And the main one is, of course, the loss of legitimacy, credibility due to corruption and ignoring the plight of the masses. So then I took that position. Well, I suffered in the process, given a long rest in the prison. But it's a time. Now it's time to move on and learn. What have we learned? That's why the importance of young leaders, youth leaders, and me included, though included not as young as it's a long time ago when I was young, I was telling minister, to then understand and have a grasp what causes us to move up and what are the issues confronting us. And the issues, of course, is poor policies. Sometimes you become like some of the great leaders I mentioned, you see. They were great leaders, they were great nationalists, great revolutionaries, but sometimes their economic prescription led to poverty of the masses. So it is careful between engaging to be able to assess carefully and clarity of policies, economic, social, dealing with the excesses within the system, which led to this tendency to be, the authoritarian and dictatorial leadership, and the allowing for abject poverty in the midst of plenty, and again, grinding poverty and corruption. So, from that, then we move. So, fortunately, as I said, ASEAN is really a very peaceful region. There was, for example, some skirmishes between Cambodia and Thailand. A few people shot, and it became a big issue, which is good to my mind. And we see in some other countries, thousands killed, and well, it takes time to resolve. You see, there's a difference. And there was a consensus. All ASEAN countries, see, Anwar, do something. We'll support you. So we did negotiate, and at least there is some ceasefire. And of course, it's working to resolve. How many shot? 2, 3 people shot, 5 injured, and became a big issue. The same like Myanmar. We continue to engage. At least it's not resolved. The case of Myanmar is not resolved, but at least there is that apparent readiness to engage, and there's some ceasefire in the sense that no continued atrocities inflicted upon minorities, religious minorities, or tribes. So peace, dividend, political stability required, and the clarity of the process, and to address some of the flaws. We shouldn't be just thinking that well, we have done the best. I go to anywhere in the world, they say, well, what great country Malaysia is. And you become, full of yourself, and to be creating a new problem. So objectively see what needs to be done. And the humility is important. Humility is important in youth, because then you learn. That arrogance will result in you thinking that you know all the answers. You don't. I don't have all the answers. The humility to acknowledge my limitations and therefore learn as much as possible and listen and observe. Okay, Ethiopia developed much later, but there are many positive traits that I can learn. You see? Of course, we can contribute in many ways too. So that is, to my mind, the exception about these countries. We have to be, we have to rush. We have to better discipline, efficient civil service, leadership that understand the need and the urgency to work hard, and to engage with the people, to appeal to them. They want to succeed. It's not just leaders, it's not just bureaucrats, it's the total resolve of the society. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Yama Bahurmai. Okay, due to time constraint, I think
I'll
that...
give you one last question if they want to.
Oh, okay, yeah. So yeah, please.
Yeah, the lady and then the Secretary General. Yes, yes. Difficult questions, your minister will reply.
Prime Minister, thank you so much for the special lecture. My question is that forums like this, most of the time, generate really brilliant ideas, but few of them actually turn into impactful initiatives. You're a man of great wisdom. What is your best advice in us in ensuring that this cooperation and this collaboration actually turns into lucrative long-term solutions and programs that can benefit our countries and the young people where we come from? Thank you.
Thank you. Well, again, I don't claim to have all the answers, but from my limited experience, having, attending Youth Council way, and those days, United Nations set up Youth Advisory Group to the Secretary General of United Nations, and I was one of the 12 sent to New York. And we all had ideas, and everybody wanted to submit beautiful resolutions. But what's important is to itemize. Item number 1, dialogue, means what? What do we do? Practically. We say training. We need new forms of training. TVET and upskilling. What do we do? Which ministries? Whom should we insist, or which ministry to contact? What is done in the past? We say, okay, better understanding economic issues. What are the problems? I mean, that is, to me, an effective, meaningful resolution, not just standards. It's just getting leaders to focus on these issues and make sure that at least by the time we meet next year, the 10 issues resolved, 90 not yet, but at least there's some progress. Yes, please.
Okay, so Mike, please.
Nobody dare say no to the Secretary General of Pan-African Youth. You see, actually we have extended over time, but because I know you don't never play around with the youth leaders. Yes.
Thank you, Excellency, for your kind opportunity. When you were elected, we were super excited because within the ecosystem, you were part of the youth ecosystem. You were part of WAY. WAY is being an institution that drives our integration. Malaysia is the current president of WAY, but it appears is dying under your presidency. We want to know from you, what's the commitment of your government to revive WAY into a global platform for young people? And the second question, Your Excellency, African young people are willing to commit meaningful collaborations with Malaysia. Malaysia has got experience in NVTI, vocational and technical training. You have reasonable understanding of technology. We want to know from you, Excellency, what should we expect from your government and from the people of Malaysia in terms of collaboration in these areas? Thank you.
Thank you. Now, on WE, yes, I did participate. I was an international committee member of WE, but not many know the fact, Izzat didn't tell you, that actually I resigned in protest. Because, well, to share with you, because at that time, the United States were supporting some of the programs. But they insisted that we follow certain rules. For example, their mode of family planning and birth control. I wasn't married then. I'm not too interested in birth control. I'm joking. But then there are issues that you shouldn't raise. Because at that time, the Russians, because at the time of Cold War, had the World Federation of Democratic Youth. But I said, okay, we don't have issues. I mean, we want to engage with them, we engage. But the American thought that to be in WE, you should not engage. And many of these friends in WE said we should accept, particularly Secretary General at that time. And because I could not agree, I resigned. But that notwithstanding, that doesn't mean that we should not support. There was one episode now WE is more independent. African countries actually take a different view. We'll engage with states, we'll engage with China, we'll engage as an independent entity. Now, I've met the current leadership of WE, and I've discussed with them. Izzat is aware of that. But I said before we move, we should build this consensus. They should talk to leaders in Africa and Asia, many of the countries, how do we proceed? And I will give you the support. But I don't want to decide based on one or two views. I've said to them, you should engage. You know, Izzat, here you engage with the African youth. What is the mechanism? What is the consensus in terms of the leadership? So that we can support. Please be assured that I'm ready to support. It doesn't cost us millions. We're not building a huge infrastructure. We're not a rich country, but we certainly can support having a proper conference and then to be able to elect new leaders with clear. And to me, no conditions attached. I've learned the hard way. I mean, at that time, I'm talking about the 70s, the late 70s, to be able to be in an international youth organization, to be sponsored to travel elsewhere is a great thing. But, you know, I blame the African leaders because they gave me that vision of integrity and dignity, independence. Reading Sekotore or Nkrumah Nyerere, dignity and independence at all cost. And then suddenly they gave me these conditions. But now, we're not imposing any conditions. Our only condition is that have a democratic forum, decide democratically, and focus on issues of interest to the youth. Thank you very much again.
All right, thank you so much, Yang Amat Berhormat, for the insightful sessions. So we believe all the participants learned a lot during these sessions. All right, at this time, we will proceed with a group photo session. We kindly invite the photographers to please come up to the